God, Trump, and the future of America. So, I mean, basically...
Trump would probably like to switch the order of those.
Yes.
But nevertheless.
I would like to remove one of them.
I thought, God, I know. Trump too?
No, remove one from the discussion. The other one, I don't need to remove because I don't have any reason to think he exists, but the discussion is good.
Well, don't you make your life talking about him?
I do spend a lot of time talking about him.
It'd be like if I've spent my life talking about unicorns.
It would be, except that you don't live in a world where the overwhelming majority of people believe in unicorns and are trying to legislate what other people can do based on what they think unicorns want.
Sachi, what is, since we're into it.
This is how it goes.
Yeah. What is a specific, concrete example of someone trying to do that?
Of trying to...
well, somebody who says, God told me X, and I want you, Matt, therefore, to do Y.
Oh, it's
Who says that? Who takes that position that you're spending your life fighting?
Sure. So are we in any way suggesting that there's not a particularly loud and well-financed fundamentalist religious right who are stacking the courts in accordance with their ideology, which is influenced by their religious things? I have family members who are primarily single-issue voters. Like, if there's two candidates and one is set out to end abortion and the other one's not, that's the only thing that matters to them. And so I think it puts people in a position where they're probably voting against their own best interests.
Can you name, I mean, just pursuing this to see what we're talking about, can you name a single Supreme Court justice who, in your opinion, does not arrive at their judgments for any constitutional or jurisprudential or moral or philosophical reason, but simply consults a divine oracle in order to make a ruling? Can you name one of them?
Oh, no. I'm not in any way suggesting people don't genuinely have these beliefs. It's just that if people's views, like people within all of them, whether they're Supreme Court justices or not, they're going to have particular views on how the way the world's going to work. You and I are. And
sure,
there are people, I have no idea if you're one of them, there are people whose view on how the world should work should be, everything should be working in accordance with my understanding of this deity.
Well, let's take an example, because I think the discussion can become kind of airy if we don't pin it down.
Okay.
Let's talk about abortion.
Sure.
Okay. Did you know, for example, that Christopher Hitchens was pro-life?
I know, for example, that Christopher Hitchens was not pro-life.
Well,
he was. So there's two different aspects of this. First of all, it doesn't matter what Hitchens believed in the first place, but he wasn't in favor of making it illegal. And my primary issue when it comes to like abortion is the legality, not whether or not somebody thinks it's immoral or not.
I interviewed Hitchens years ago for a magazine, and we talked about this issue. And he made what I thought was an interesting point coming from an atheist perspective, which was, he said, look, it's one thing if you say that you believe in Hindu reincarnation in which we have many different lives, or if you believe that there is a life to come in which if you happen to be terminated in the womb, you're going to go to life everlasting. He goes, I don't believe any of that. I believe we have one life. This is it. This is the only one. And so ultimately, it is the greatest value. And if you have a life that is coming into being and it's snuffed out, all its choices interrupted at the outset, he goes, you got to think before you do that, right? Now, let's leave the legality issue, because I think the abortion debate has become radicalized since Hitchens died. Whether Hitchens would have supported late-term abortion, we don't really know. But what I'm trying to say is that here's Hitchens.
And I don't really care.
You don't really care. But the point I'm trying to make is this. You're saying that religious people apply a worldview. And I'm saying you do too. Hitchens does too. All of us have a worldview.
I think I just said that like 3 minutes ago. The issue is whether or not, so if somebody's saying that their worldview is right because it comes from the divine, and there's no demonstration that A, there is anything divine, or that they have any good understanding of what the divine would want, then I would hope that we would agree that that is at least a fallacious appeal to an authority that can't be demonstrated.
Well, but I would argue that first of all, none of us in America conducts a voting test in which when somebody comes into the booth and decides, for example, why do you want to have an abortion? Someone could say, because it's fun. Someone could say, because I think it's a form of birth control. Someone could say, in other words, what I'm trying to get at is we don't conduct a rational scrutiny test to make sure that people who vote about climate change, someone says, I believe in climate change. I'm like, don't you own a house that's on the water? Yes, you do. Has that house gone down in value? No. Now,
Is that the test for whether or not
No.
climate
What I'm trying to say
Okay.
is we don't subject people's political views to a scrutiny in which we ask, are there irrational...
In what way?
Well, let's say somebody says...
I'm just trying to make sure I understand what you're saying.
Well, you're saying that when it comes to religious believers, right?
Right.
There's a compartment that they have, let's call it the divine compartment.
For some of them, sure.
Right, and so they appeal to this, from your point of view, irrational source. And they try to import that source into politics, which according to you is fallacious. They shouldn't be doing that. And I'm saying all kinds of people who are not religious say the wackiest things.
But
and
that's
have
a
the
Tukul-K fallacy. That's whataboutism. I would object to anybody doing things on behalf of irrational reasons. I'm just saying that
So you would like to see our democratic process purified of the irrational.
I would like to see our universe purified of the irrational.
Okay, and how would you go about doing that?
Education, by actually teaching people not only critical thinking, but logic and fallacies, so that instead of believing something when they don't have a good reason, they reserve belief until they do have a good reason. You shouldn't believe anything until the evidence actually supports it. Now, you're going to get into arguments about how much evidence is enough, or, do I have enough evidence for this? But we've been, on the God subject, I mean, I was just having a conversation with somebody the other day, and it's like, what is the evidence for God? What is the reason that anybody should believe there's a God at all?
Okay.
And so far, despite countless debates, nobody seems to have come up with a sound reason for that, and yet they go 10 steps further, which is not only is there a God, but it's this God, and my understanding of this God, and this is how we interact, and the Bible is the true guidebook, or the Quran is the true guidebook, and the question then becomes, we have a proposition, any proposition, whether it's God or climate change or whatever, how do we go about determining whether or not that proposition is reasonable to accept?
Okay.
And on the God front, maybe you have something better than anybody else has come up with. What is the reasonable warrant for accepting that there's a God at all?
Okay. Let me try to answer that. I start with the fact that here we are flung into the world with no clear understanding of A, where the universe came from, not the earth, but the universe. B, why we're here and what the purpose of our life is. And C, what, if anything, happens to us after we die. I would argue that, so we are in a very peculiar position. We're human beings, we're flung into the world, and the three of the most important questions we could possibly ask, we have no answer to. Now
I'm going to agree with you.
Do you agree or you not agree?
I'm going to agree with you on two of the three. The middle one, on purpose, I think assumes there's a purpose that there's been no demonstration there's a purpose to it.
What, if any, purpose we have for our
Sure.
life? Okay, so now we are in agreement that on the three cardinal questions, we are in a certain kind of blindness. We're in a certain kind of blind ignorance because we don't know, correct?
So so if we start you're saying we're flung into this universe without an understanding of the origin of the universe, the purpose of life, or what happens afterwards.
Right, where the universe came from,
Yes.
who, if anyone, or
Sure.
what made it, if anyone. B, what the purpose of our life is, if any. And C, what, if anything, happens to us after we die.
We are in violent agreement right now.
Perfect. Now, the second question arises, what does science have to say about these three questions? Can science either now, and if it can't now, settle these matters in the future? Let's look at them one by one. Let's take them in reverse order.
Sure.
Can science decide the matter of whether or not there is life after death, yes or no?
It depends.
Depends on what?
So science only deals with the natural world.
Correct.
And so if in fact there's a supernatural existence after this, then it may forever be beyond the purview of science.
Correct. Or if there is another universe that operates according to different laws and we happen to move somehow into that universe, science would have nothing to say about it, correct?
Not necessarily, because
Okay.
if it's a natural, like we have like hypotheses about a multiverse or whatever.
Correct.
I can't say what science will be able to test for in the future, or whether or not we are permanently confined to the cosmos that we experience. I can't say. I can't even rule out, I can't say that science could never say anything about the supernatural. All I can say is that as it stands right now, I'm unaware of any supernatural claim that has any evidence for it that science could evaluate to determine that it was true.
Right. Let's put it a little differently because I don't want to debate the detail here. I just want to look at the macro picture. And what I'm basically saying is Shakespeare said, I think correctly, death is the undiscovered country. No one has been to the other side of the curtain and essentially reported, given us empirical evidence one way or the other, correct? We don't know what happens after death. True?
So here's the thing, and I promise I'm not being difficult. This is just for clarity. As a skeptic, my position is not, like when the psychics who claim that they're speaking with the dead.
Right.
My position is not, they're wrong and that's bullshit. My position is they cannot demonstrate that what they're actually doing is what they claim. And so I can't say nobody's been to the other side and communicated back. I can just say there's no reliable evidence for it, and I don't know what shape that evidence would take in order to demonstrate that.